that first student team of five, they came over the radio and they announced the time, and in their mind, they instantly knew that's a record. I mean, they exploded.
G'day, JP here for another episode of My Mates Faster. Today I'm a bit excited. I'm joined by a college professor from Oregon State University who's got a team of students together to race a land speed project over the last few years on the Salt at Bonneville and also El Mirage. So, in our ageing population of land speed racing, here we have someone who's bringing youth to the sport. I'm intrigued to see how he's doing it and how the project got off the ground. And also, being 50cc, it's right up my alley. So I look forward to having a chat too. And welcome, John Greeven. Well, welcome, John Greeven, to an episode of My Mates Faster. It's a pleasure to have you on here today. Can you tell us, John, how fast have you been?
Well, at Bonneville, we set a record in 24 in the 85 mile an hour range with our 50cc MPS-F for fuel. And I guess, in other contexts, I've been a little faster.
For those who don't know, you're a professor at Oregon State University.
Well, I was an instructor there for a few years after retiring from industry. I was still continuing on to work with students, which we can talk more about.
For those who don't know, a capstone project. I had to look it up. I'm not a university graduate by any means. So can you just explain what that means?
Sure. So every engineering student, I think in the U.S. and possibly in other countries as well, is required to do a project when they're seniors. The requirement includes you have to work with several other students, so you have to be on a team. And they usually have a client, an actual client, which is commonly a company, a large, small company, local, sometimes not local, who has a project that they would like done, and they're just not getting to it themselves. It's not a super high priority thing, or they would be getting to it. But they're like, we could get some students to do this for us. And then oftentimes they have a junior person in their company who is aspiring to be a manager. And they say, well, hey, how about you manage these students, and we'll have this, win-win situation. So the students get to practice having a job, essentially.
A real world project then.
Right. And you have the dynamics of having to work with several other people, and things don't necessarily, go exactly perfectly all the time, and communication skills, and they have to practice all of this. And as an instructor, I had a whole bunch of these projects in my class. I was essentially their boss, and I told them that's how I'm going to behave. You're going to come to me, we're going to meet every week, and we're going to talk about your progress and what things you might need, what stumbling blocks you've run into, I'll try to help you, right? This kind of thing. So the same sort of dynamics.
How does land speed racing become the project? How did that happen?
I have a long history of doing road racing, raced Formula Fords and other types of classes till very, very recently. In fact, I still race for fun with a group of people in a sort of a low-key endurance racing called Lucky Dog. I was instructing students, and I had a lot of technical kinds of projects in my classes. There were kids developing high-powered rockets, airplanes, and all sorts of stuff. And I thought to myself, well, maybe we could start a new kind of project, and could it be a motorcycle? And I asked around, and people were like, sure, give it a whirl, And so I had already been working on a land speed racing motorcycle a couple of years in advance, and went just for fun to Bonneville in 2018. I wanted to just go be a spectator.
Right.
And sort of before, maybe just a few months before, I thought, I wonder if you could bring something. Just anything, just to be a participant, not to set a record, just to be a participant. So I realized when I bought the book that there was a section of the book that was quite inexpensive. It was 50cc, which of course is not so inexpensive, but relative to some of the other things that are going 600 miles an hour, yes, they are. So I built I hot rodded a little Aprilia RS50, and my son and I went. And in the morning, we would make a run. In the afternoon, we'd be spectators, and we'd watch other people make their passes, things like that. So that's how you get hooked.
Do you remember in 2018, just you personally, do you remember the first time you drove onto the Salt and you saw that? I was there in 18 and running the little 50cc myself. The Salt was in pretty good condition. Do you remember seeing that big white expanse and what you thought?
People who've never been need help to understand how big it is, right? It's quite an expanse. I mean, the track itself isn't, but the expanse that is the Salt is enormous. I mean, it disappears over the horizon, right? And it feels a little bit like, I don't know, like you've been sent to Mars or the moon or someplace, and you look around, you're like, my gosh, this is just, It's endless. You lose perspective. Well, how far away are those mountains? I have no idea.
There's nothing to compare them to, is there? So there's no even when you're running on the track. Yeah, no reference. That's right. You're working with the university there, and you get the land speed okay to do a land speed racing capstone project. What university degrees or what courses are people studying that can apply for that project?
I was working at the College of Engineering, and initially I just wanted to get a group of engineers to work on a project. I mean, I was recruiting. These projects appear, and sometimes they're not interesting enough, and you don't get students, right? So, but this one obviously was interesting. So I got 5 students right away. 3 of them were mechanical engineers, and 2 of them were computer science, so software people. Pretty much none of them had any motorcycle experience, and you have to explain to them that that's okay. This is all about learning. I didn't know everything either. We're going to figure it out together.
Now I look back at the last decade, land speed racing is really the perfect body for that project. Like, you got to overcome so many issues, and they're never ending, aren't they? I see from looking at some of your photos, it's even just not the building of the bike and the aerodynamics, but the promoting the team, then you get all these other different areas come into it.
We struggle for funding and sponsorship, and the students learn how to do all those things, right? Yeah, they learn to cold call companies, say, hey, I'm a student at the university, and we're doing this cool thing. And really, I didn't know you guys did that. And pretty soon you have them hooked. And of course, in the immediate area, let's say within the 100 miles of here, there are an awful lot of people that you might speak to who actually went to this university. And so then, you touch a soft spot and, oh, that's great. I went there. I graduated 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever.
You've started the project, and you have did you start with the RS50? Was that the platform?
That was the first bike, yeah. And with 5 students, and we just went from there.
What year was the first year of the project?
23 to 24. And
okay.
We went to compete in 24.
And you went to Bonneville first before El Mirage?
No, we went to El Mirage in the first event of the season, which is in May.
And I could tell you were the boss of the project because you were riding.
I am. Well, I like I said, that first group, none of them rode motorcycles.
Okay,
so, I couldn't stick one of those guys on the bike.
By default.
Well, and it was my bike. And then soon after, I donated it to the school.
Okay.
So they would have the bike. And then the next year, I recruited a team that included a young woman, a student, who had ridden from the time she was, 4 or 5 years old.
So every year you have this bunch of guys and girls come together. They develop. I'll just see you've set a record recently at over 90 miles an hour at El Mirage. So you've stepped up your game every year. Do you advance the bike every year, or do you go back a bit and start again, or how does that happen?
Well, we've done a number of things. Where do I begin? So you have a lot of things that you would like to try, and you can't necessarily do them all, but maybe I can, because I can get more and more students. So, okay, you 3 work on this, and you 5 work on this, and so on. And so this year I had 25 students. So there were several projects we could actually launch. And of course, you don't have success with all of them. They're not skilled engineers, with careers in engineering. They're students. And so some of the projects are more successful than others. And the deal that I make with them is like, look, you need to create a prototype of this thing that we've asked you to work on. We give them very broad objectives so they can sort of invent their own solution, right?
Sure.
And then so you prototype it, you bench test it in some fashion, show me that it works. And then at some point we decide, let's put it on the bike and let's test it. And if we test it, and it's somehow better, it gets to stay on the bike. And then, of course, guess where the bike goes? The bike goes to a competition, and then you get to say your parts were on the record or whatever happens with the bike.
When the team goes to Bonneville, how many people go?
Of the 5, I had 4.
Okay.
That first year. Okay. This year, I'll probably have a similar number, even though I'm starting with 25. Because, the students have lives and internships, and they graduate, and all sorts of things happen, right? Continuity is a big challenge in this way of doing it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking with the development of the bike. I'm guessing it's a capstone project, so every student really moves on. There's no student that backs up second year?
To handle some of that, I won't say it's a perfect solution. I also started a club at the university, and the club welcomes everybody. And so I have a few business students, for example, and they're doing promotion, or they're doing, shirts for the team, or graphics, or they're thinking about the branding of the motorcycle and how to present that to sponsors. So we have non-engineers working on projects. And then we have freshman engineers, sophomore engineers, juniors, seniors. And so that kind of lends some continuity.
Look, it must be a real buzz as you saw the salt for the first time. When you take those 4 or 5 students onto the salt, their eyes must be like dinner plates, I'm guessing.
It's true. And it's funny, there's such an age gap between myself and a student, right? I know that they're excited about things. I get reminded occasionally that it's actually a lot. And it's moments like that first student team of 5, when they came over the radio and they announced the time, and they knew how much it would take to set a record, and in their mind they instantly knew that's a record. I mean, they exploded, right? They just exploded, with all sorts of things coming out of their mouths. And when I saw the video, I realized, I knew they were into this, but I didn't realize quite how much, right?
Yeah,
and you forget what that's like, right?
Well, especially because you go year after year, and it'll become more dumbed down for you. But yeah, that's I take the rookies at Australian Speed Week, and you have a chat to them in the pits, and you take them up the start line, and when they see that start line, they're looking down the course and all the flags. It's like,
wow,
wow! You're reminded then about what it's real. Then, isn't it? It becomes real,
right.
So,
right. And it's serious, right? There's a serious side to all that, right?
Yeah, sure. No, it's
Being
an amazing.
Good at what you do, safety, all that kind of stuff. Right?
Oh, it's an amazing sport. I love land speed racing, and it's a perfect tool. And to get around the aging population, it's a great thing you're doing. We touched on funding there, and how do we fund that? We do.
So funding companies. The most common type of outside funding, because there's internal funding too, is in-kind donations.
Okay.
You talk to Electron and they give you a carburetor, or they give you a discount on a carburetor, or so they sell you steel tubing and you make a bike out of it, or whatever it is, material.
Okay.
Some of them will give you money. That's a little harder to come by.
Sure.
And then internally, the College of Engineering has fundraising programs that the students participate in. And there's a charitable institution that actually is dedicated to fundraising for the university. And some of that money percolates down to student clubs. And so the club, that's another reason to start the club, is a way to access some of that money.
So you're always open to sponsorship then?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll tell you about a recent one that's in development. So hemp is becoming rejuvenated as a fiber in this world. Yep. Hemp was used for thousands of years and then ran into legal problems in all sorts of places in the world. But the material is really fantastic. I'm currently running a rear wheel disc, an aerodynamic disc to cover the rear wheel that is a composite, but it's made with hemp. And so there's a hemp institute at the university, and they've received I think it's close to $100 million in various grants to develop hemp as a commercial product.
Sure.
In all sorts of ways, whether it's clothing or rope or, whatever it is. And so that institute is interested in the fact that we just set a record at El Mirage using hemp-based parts. So we're trying to see what we can stir up a little bit there.
The SCTA, AMA, BMST, FIM, they have any input at all to the program? Do they help at all? I
haven't really solicited them. The only thing we've done is the one that female student that was the rider last year. She actually was awarded an SCTA scholarship, and that's the only thing that I think we've received in terms of donations or support from those organizations.
Do you see these students that have passed through the program? Do you think any of them will become land speed racers in the future? Do you see a hook there? Or? Yeah,
there is one for sure. They all sort of need to establish lives and get going, right?
Sure.
But this one student he can't help himself. He's constantly buying dilapidated motorcycles and fixing them up and flipping them and flipping them as in selling them. Should be careful about expressions.
No, we're good.
Because you can flip a motorcycle.
No.
But this kind of thing, right? So he's definitely, and he's told me as much. So I'm going to have to do this somehow. And he has a moped that he's preparing. An actual moped and a Portuguese moped, I think, a really unusual bike. He's thinking about running it in maybe just the Run What You Brung class this year.
Well, if the SCTA are listening, maybe at least a free entry, I would think, would be on the cards for the university.
That's the problem, is students have no money.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And
I have no money.
Well, they have less, right?
Yeah, I know. I have a student daughter.
There you go. You have no money.
Exactly.
So, that there has to be a way to have it be accessible for them. And then once they're in and a few years down the road, then they can graduate to normal membership or normal classes or something that costs more normally.
I did talk to John Levi a couple episodes ago. He's a good friend of mine who's been 320 in his sidecar streamliner. And he was saying that he thought that we have a 100cc class, or a 50cc class, run what you brung, make it accessible, because a lot of motorsport, and I sponsor a couple of people here in Australia for one of my businesses and they're young guys, they're 11, 12, and they race motocross. So land speed racing doesn't have that early in, so you race motocross and you're hooked, you're a motocross racer then. So when you're 18, 19, you're not going land speed racing, you're racing dirt bikes forever. So we don't have that hook. So, maybe that the 50cc, 100cc thing could be an answer. And, I know your students are a little bit
accessible. They can get into it. It's not expensive. You can find lots of old 100cc bikes laying around.
Well, that's the reason, we originally went a small class for two reasons. Finance, firstly, and we weren't going 200 mile an hour, if we had a issue. So, it's definitely accessible. Yeah.
So there's two more things I want to make sure I bring up about accessibility to a younger crowd, right? And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert because I'm not, right? But it would be good if it maybe had an electric component, electric bikes, electric cars, or even just hybrid something or another. Another area that's very popular, of course, at least in this country, is all of the small Japanese cars. Little Hondas, right? All whatever it is, little hot hatches. That's real popular. They're always playing around with old rotaries or whatever it is, right? That's going on. And then the third element is social. We went to El Mirage and we're a part of what's called LSR Club. Is this how you're structured in Australia? We have maybe a dozen clubs that together are the underpinning of SCTA.
No, we just have the DLRA and we're all individuals. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have all these sub-clubs underneath SCTA. And so I'm a part of LSR. The people who were in charge of LSR, president and so on, it's just a young couple or a middle-aged couple. And we had a barbecue right there on the playa, right, in El Mirage. And of course, I invited my students, and I brought, about 5 pounds of tri-tips, and we barbecued, and we had a ball, right? And the students had a ball. That's the important piece. They had a great time. They got to know these people. Of course, they're great people. And the students had a great time. Well, that needs to be part of the mix if you're going to attract them, right, in large numbers, and they're going to stay.
No, you are right. I've been to Bonneville a few times now, and we don't have that social side. And I know everyone's busy. It's a busy week. If you get there and you're on your program, you've got things to do. But we need to make time, you're right, to bring a space.
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. But, but we make time for the 200 mile an hour club one night of the week. I don't know, there should be a rookie or a first-timers barbecue, you're right. Tacos and beers, whatever it is. But, I definitely agree with you. And I know in Australia, we're battling the same problem in Australia, and we really have tried to put a lot of focus on the rookies and making sure that what they pay for is rewarded. That week is a great week for them, because I think we get about 50 rookies a year, and we seem to hang on to about 10, and then of that 10, maybe 2 will become teams that you'll see for a decade. So the numbers are low, so you need to really be doing your best efforts. If there's another university professor, teacher out there who's looking at this program, what do you tell him? What does he need to learn? What's the mistakes? What does he need to do?
I know what I know, which is it's fairly accessible if you start with a small class like one of the 50cc classes. There is another professor, he's retired also, down in Southern California out of UC Irvine, that's the university, and they race a 350cc pushrod Italian motorcycle. What was the name of that motorcycle? They call themselves the Red Baron. They're quite popular on social media.
Yeah, I know that. I know the team.
And the rider is a student or a woman who was a student. Neither one of them are at the university anymore, but they continue doing it. Continuity is like you say, it's quite a challenge.
From 10 years from now, where do we see the University of Oregon's Land Speed Project team? Where are we at? What do you hope to see where it goes?
Well, creating something that can survive without you is a good sign of good planning. For anything, whether it's a business or what have you. Right? I think that the combination of having a club that has all of the ages in it, from freshmen on up, a structure that is like a club. You have a president and treasurer and so on that can meet regularly. I've given them all the hardware that they need, right? They have an Aprilia now that they own. There's one issue that they're working through, which is the university is uncomfortable with students riding the motorcycle, testing different ideas about how to make that happen. That way that they can truly own and ride and compete, then they won't need an external rider. It's liability and all those kinds of things, right? And then funding, if you get some small number of funding sources going, they will recur every year, right? And there's a tendency for those to stick around. Those are the three elements that are needed. There's plenty of kids that ride motorcycles and they're attracted to it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't worry about that part of it, but it's once they're in, do they end up going to SCTA, for the long run? And I think the numbers are small right now. I mean, I got one.
If you're looking, I should just say to everyone who's watching this podcast, if you want to get involved and help the university there or your project, how do they go about that?
Get in touch with me. I mean, the students do have a website. There is a pretty nice Instagram that's rolling, but that's not a great way to get in touch with people, right? That would be the way to do it. I'd have to give you no,
that's okay.
An email address.
Anybody can reach out to me anyway, and I can pass them on. I do notice on the social side of it, there's a few different pages running there. It seems I guess that's the year on year stuff, is it? The change.
Some of those things kind of fall on their face because then the student leaves, and then the TikTok doesn't move forward. Instagram's rolling. We have somebody that's very active.
Yeah, no, look, it's been. I can say, as a tip there is that, we don't race a lot. So those social platforms really do reward, my sponsors. They look at those social platforms all the time, and they've been a great asset to our team. And I think also, there's a few teams in the world that are pretty high profile on the social platforms and do their best to get the love of land speed racing out there, I guess, which is it's another tool, isn't it? Bonneville, mate, you're heading there in August. MPS fuel, I guess. Are you running fuel or gas class?
We're going to run gas. The record we set at El Mirage last week was in gas. So we've stepped over to the gasoline side.
Just on that record at El Mirage, did you have the El Mirage turbocharger running that day? Or
El Mirage horsepower, it's called.
Yeah.
We had a lot of it.
Did you?
We had a lot of it. That's why we went 94 and change.
I wonder about how you get that record again without the turbocharger, without the horsepower, the wind.
Well, they have wind there a lot.
They do. Yeah,
it's not an uncommon thing there. No, it almost always comes from the same place, which is either directly behind you or slightly to the quartering side.
Yeah.
And so there's an interesting trade-off because in the morning, of course, it's cooler. Everybody likes to run when it's cooler because there's more horsepower, there's more oxygen. But in the afternoon is when the wind picks up.
I've always wanted to go there with take our 100cc there, but Dad's like, "Oh, it looks so dirty and dusty." I'm like, "Yeah, it's pretty
very, very dusty. It's a very, very fine, almost like a talc."
Like a talc, right? Yeah, like a bull dust we have here in Australia. When you go, so you're off to Bonneville, you run the MPS gas. What's the record, mate, you're chasing?
82.5.
Oh, you think that you almost have that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we're in a strong position. We'll see.
When you run the fuel class, do you run a type of fuel, methanol, or
With the Aprilia, I tried all the alcohols. I mean, I was running E85, and I realized I didn't want to do that, and I wound up running a lot of methanol testing, and then I moved over to nitromethanol. So I started blending in about 20% nitromethane, and ran quite well. I was coming up on El Mirage time. And I had only done a little bit of nitromethane testing. And I thought, okay, what is it I'm going to do? Am I going to take more of a risk and do something that I've got less data for and go that way, which is nitromethane? Or will I back up to what I was doing 2 weeks ago and I have a lot of information about how to run with methanol? So we ran methanol. Bonneville, we ran methanol as well.
Oh, did you? Oh, I think once you've got the methanol set up, you're only a step away from the nitro then anyway. So,
and it worked great. It was working terrific.
No,
but there's a lot to figure out. You know more than anybody, right? Compression ratios, ignition timing, you got to really get it right because nitro in particular is not very forgiving.
Oh, we just pour it in, mate.
No,
you don't
believe you.
That's what we tell people anyway. The 5 students going this year to Bonneville?
About. It's hard for them to commit more than about a day in advance.
Sure. Well, I hope to be there, and I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great.
Hope to be there. My bike's actually in San Francisco at the moment, sitting there. The engine's on the bench here, and I'm waiting on some.
At Top One, right?
At Top One, that's right. Yeah. They're good guys. They're good guys, and you never know. We might even get one of those stickers on the Aprilia yet.
Well, now I have a Derby. I didn't really tell you that part of the story.
Oh, okay, sure.
I bought a second bike, and I've developed it, and that's the gasoline bike.
Right. Yeah,
the kids are still working on the methanol bike.
The Derby's a great platform,
and I like the engine better, honestly.
Yeah, if you talk to Arno, I just actually messaged Arno a bit a lot yesterday, and he said he'd been talking to you, and
yes,
and he said, we had a bit of a chat about you. So,
in what language do you communicate?
Well, he says he talks to you in Spanish.
Well, yeah, he speaks Spanish very well.
Yeah,
I'm Hispanic, so for me it's easy.
Yeah, okay. Well, we actually speak heaps broken English.
Okay. I was curious how, because his English, is, like you said, it's broken.
Yeah. But we've been talking for a decade, so
Okay.
we know each other's mannerisms pretty well.
He's so helpful. He is fantastic. He helps us so much.
Oh, those guys have been, they started off as a competitor to us because we were in the 100cc class and trying to be the fastest, and they had a fast 100, so we bumped into each other a couple of times, and they took the record, or they took the fastest off us, and we got it back, and so and so. Then I set a record using their parts, a couple of years later, and I've been to France on holiday and hung out with them, and they're a really
nice.
A lovely bunch of guys, and just really just an expansion of that, how good the Land Speed family is, really,
And my students have a lot of, questions, and they're very gracious and patient and answer all the questions.
I'll make sure I bring my diary with me then with all my notes so I can answer any questions. The memory's not what it used to be.
Sure. So I look forward to, I don't know which event he's going to be going to, and it may not be Speed Week.
Yeah, no, I did hear he may be BMST, and then he's probably, I think he's going through the same thing we're going through here in Australia, that the economy's tightened right up with the war, and fuel prices are through the roof and the flow on. So I think he's a bit like me. He's 50-50 on we can go, but what do we come back to? How tight the wallet is. So, look, I'll be there, I think, in some capacity, whether a spectator, and I'll love to come say good day and have a chat and have some tri-tip on the barbecue.
Absolutely. We, we're not that far away. I think for us, it's maybe 12, 14-hour drive.
Sure.
So
yeah, no,
it's not that far.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Once again, congratulations on the program, and it's great to see. I love this sport, and it's great to see someone driving youth into land speed racing. It's well overdue, and I hope the SCTA and the people there and the BMST, AMA, FMI guys see some of this, and we can get the word out.
Let me leave you with one more sort of tip. This is not the only motorsport that has an aging out problem. Okay, aging out as in all the population of the membership is getting old and the membership is shrinking, right? Vintage automobile racing, all sorts of motorsports are having a very similar issue. The younger generations are just not as engaged with those kinds of sports. And so the reason I bring this up is not for doom and gloom, but to actually say we're all working on this. And so we can borrow ideas from these other organizations potentially. So let's all try to stay in touch with each other about, hey, I tried this, and hey, that sort of seems to be working. Oh my gosh, then we should all do it, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Thanks for your time again, and
thank you.
I'll see you in August.
All right, see you then. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate.